Hello, everyone, and welcome to another special episode of the Veterinary Roundtable, the podcast where we answer your veterinary-related questions while having some fun along the way. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to leave us a review on your podcast provider of choice. And if you have any feedback to offer to improve the Veterinary Roundtable, please let us know.
Before we get into introductions...
Wow. Okay.
We just want to once again promote our amazing social medias, Instagram and TikTok at the Veterinary Roundtable, and then our really special thing we need to promote. Our texting service is on all podcast platforms. And so when you click on the Veterinary Roundtable, when you click on the episode you'd like to listen to, at the very top, there's a little link that says text us. It's a texting feature, so you can leave reviews, questions, comments, concerns, whatever you want. But then make sure to put your name because it doesn't automatically put a username. So if you want a shout out on our podcast or to know who the comment came from, put your name.
Yes, ma'am.
Say your name. Say your name. Beautiful. Anyway, I'm Courtney Allen.
I'm Devin Fortune.
I'm Emily King.
I'm Dr. Ashlyn Duckwall. You didn't say doctor. I usually follow
Dr.
your lead.
Emily King. Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, so time
To get
for the
introduce.
introduction of our special guest. Here we
Yes.
go. She loves her dogs with a college education in learning theory and behavior and a lifelong devotion to continuing to learn and grow. She is dedicated to helping people and dogs. She enjoys training puppies just as much as she likes working with more difficult cases. As a skilled teacher, she takes pride in her patient nature and ability to coach owners. She likes people just as much as she likes dogs. Her accolades include pursuing a Master of Science in Clinical Animal Behavior from the University of Edinburgh, Bachelor of Science in Psychology, IAABC Certified Behavior Consultant, the Third Way Certified Trainer, Fear-Free Certified Professional, and an Absolute Dog Certified Pro Trainer. Needless to say, she's certified. Please welcome Gia Savocchi to the podcast.
Yes.
Hi, thanks.
I am impressed.
Yes.
Yes,
To say the
that is
least.
really
It's a lot of-
impressive.
it's a
You
nice
definitely
laundry
are
list.
interested in learning as much as possible about different facets of training and behavior.
Mhm.
Like if you look at all the different credentials that you've
Mhm.
acquired over time, they speak to different areas of behavior and learning in general. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. This has been like a lifelong journey for me and continuing.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? No
Awesome.
kidding.
So cool.
Okay, so typically before we get into some like serious questions about behavior, because there's a ton of them, as I'm sure you know, we usually like to just kind of kick things off with a little bit of an icebreaker.
Yeah.
So one of the questions we always ask our guests is, if you could be a product in the pantry, what would you be?
This is really on the spot here.
That was me.
What would I be?
That was Devin. That was Devin last week.
Yes,
she
that
was
was
really,
me the
she was
first time I was
like,
asked that.
yep, staring into space, like could not
I had
decide.
to circle back the next week.
Yes. Yeah, you did circle back. That's right.
Are we talking food?
Whatever you
Anything.
want.
Whatever
Whatever's
you
in your
want it to
pantry.
be. Yep.
I mean, I like my special thing right now is like Annie's mac and cheese.
Ooh,
Okay.
nice. Okay.
It's a special treat and it comes
Mhm.
in cute little animal shapes. You know, you can get like
That's awesome.
letters, little animals. So like fun, but nutritious,
I
organic.
like that.
Yeah.
That was
Good
good.
answer.
Okay,
That was
I
good
like
on
it.
the
That's
spot.
a good answer. Good
Okay.
answer.
I like hearing all the answers. It's fun. Okay, next question. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only bring 3 things, what would they be?
3 things on a desert island. I would bring my cell phone so I could continue to make content. I would bring my dog and like a satellite internet.
There you
Okay,
go.
nice.
Genius.
Devin,
That's-
what would you
that is
bring?
all you
You're the
need.
traveler. What would you
Well, the first time I read this, I thought it was just deserted. I didn't realize it was desert.
bring?
But I'm going to go with deserted because my answer would be different.
Okay.
But I think that's what the question is. It says on a desert island. Okay. Desert and desert. I don't know. Okay.
Okay,
but
yes. Okay, I see where you're
deserted
going.
island,
Okay,
I
yes.
still picture trees
Yes.
and whatnot.
Okay.
Flint and steel
Oh.
to start fires.
Oh.
Okay. She's going hardcore.
I watched a lot of Naked and Afraid when I was younger.
I love Naked and Afraid.
An axe so I can chop
Mm.
things and for protection. And
I know. Tell me. I just can't believe you're. Go ahead.
and a pot.
You're not going to bring Walter?
Well, Walter, Walter's safest at home, and
Oh my gosh.
what if you
I
could come back and
never
see him
would have
ever?
thought. I would have thought Walter
what
would
if you're
have
stuck
definitely
there?
made
If
the
I
top
couldn't,
three.
if I couldn't go back to see Walter, then 2 of the things. 1 would be Walter, and 2 would be a stroller.
It's true.
Walter's her cat.
Yes, she loves her cat.
My beloved
yes.
child. And then a pot for like water or
Food.
I can like burn the
Okay.
salt and the bacteria out of the water.
Okay.
I'm bringing the ATV to get the heck out of there. I don't know about you guys.
What if you're
but
surrounded by water?
it
If it's
just
a deserted island,
it said an island. Okay.
a kayak.
One that turns into a boat.
Okay.
And then a big jug of water.
Okay.
I don't need to
water.
boil. I'm just going to bring my own water.
Okay.
And ration.
And
Oh my goodness.
A bottle
an
of
umbrella.
wine.
Just stay out of the sun and protect my
So
skin.
lame. You guys wouldn't survive.
Nope. Pretty much they're toast.
I kind of want the challenge for like a week.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
A
I'm
week.
going to sit there, my umbrella.
Oh my gosh.
With your jug of water.
No, I'm going to bring a weird oversized worm that anyone seen
What?
the Dune movies? The
Oh
Dune
yes.
movies.
Yes.
If
the
they're in a
Dune
desert.
movies.
I can travel on a
You
worm.
could travel on a worm.
I'm going to bring
A big old bull worm.
a mutant worm.
They are.
Make sure to bring a halter for it. Jeez.
Okay.
She gonna bring her back
Okay.
in.
Okay.
Hey, no, you guys have to do it too.
You want me to say what I would be on the desert
Yeah, we
island
haven't done
before we
this
get
one yet.
started? Okay, I would bring what would I bring? I would bring a boat. And
Between you and me, we'd get out of there.
I mean, really. And I would bring my cell phone like Gia.
Yeah.
I would do that.
I think
for
I know
sure.
what your third one's gonna be.
And what'd you say?
I think I know what your third one's gonna be.
You're guessing what my third one's going to
Mhm.
be? Which child do I pick? I don't know.
I was gonna say a book. I was
Oh, book. Okay, yeah, boom. Okay, yeah. I don't know which book though. I mean, it's hard as picking
There's
which
so many.
child.
You got to slow down in your reading.
Okay, yep.
I have to
Courtney.
go. I would bring my husband so he could do the hunting.
Okay, I like it.
And then I would bring a water purifier thing,
Mm.
just like a filter, like
Okay,
a pot boiling
yeah.
it, but just that. And then
Miles?
paddleboard,
Oh, paddleboard. Yeah.
so I
Just
can go tool around
in case you like it there. you
and
can
have a good
just
time.
Yeah.
stay.
We would be.
And that would be my
screwed.
bed. I could
Yeah.
double it as a bed,
You could.
so I don't
That
have to
is
sleep on the
true.
ground.
Could.
You should bring a kayak, and then you can get all cozy.
Yeah. I would just say, nah, no thanks. I'm not
No.
going.
I'll build my own paddleboard.
Okay, now let's dive in because this is going to be
This is
such
going to be
a
a
good
very
topic.
yes. I'm very excited.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just start off with something simple. Tell us about yourself. When did you know you were interested in canine behavior and kind of how did you get to where you are today?
Okay, so I'm based out of New York, and for as long as I can remember, I've always loved animals and worked with animals. So growing up, my aunt and uncle had a dog daycare that was very sizable, and also a dairy farm. And my other aunt was a veterinarian. So for the summer, I'd be up living either at the animal hospital, which is in an old funeral home that she lived in,
Oh,
and
That's
worked out of. Actually, the operating table was the old morgue table.
Oh my God.
I love it.
Was it haunted?
The vibes.
It wasn't haunted, but convenient drains in the floor
Yes.
all over the place.
Yeah.
And the table
Hey, smart.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then-
for sure.
I rode horses and worked on the dairy farm, like milking, actually, and then worked in the dog daycare. And from there, I went to college at Portland State University and studied psychology with a lot of emphasis on applied behavior analysis. And I also was working at another training facility at that time where I did my first mentorship. And I immediately started working with dogs while living on a horse farm and also working on the horse farm. And
awesome.
so as I got more into dogs and had several near misses with horses and realized the older you get, the harder you fall, and to more work with dogs. And it's just evolved over time. So I started out, of course, training puppies, but then doing some behavioral cases, had my own dogs, started training them for agility competitions, moved back to New York at some point, and then I started more heavily working with dogs with aggressive behaviors and problems. So
That's
that's,
cool.
that's the general trajectory, just consistently working on harder and harder cases. And now I work really, really severe cases. We get called to do like expert witness for law firms for dog bites, or to evaluate dogs for the courts. And I evaluate shelter dogs. And then, of course, work with people's pets.
Sure.
That's so cool. How many dogs do you have then?
I have 3.
3. Okay.
Yeah. What kind of dogs are they?
They're
what
border
breeds?
collies.
Border collies. Oh, yeah.
The smart ones.
I had a border collie when I was finishing veterinary school, and her name was Bean, and she was Harrison loved that dog.
Yeah.
She was the best dog ever. And was just so smart and so loyal, and she could be off lead, and she was just great to work with. She was amazing. I loved her.
I think I probably told you guys, but my next life, I would literally, if I had as much time as I could devote, I would get border collies and do agility training. I love watching it on TV, the AKC challenges. Love it. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, but the Pacers game, they had border collies as the halftime show.
Oh, did they really?
It was so cool.
That's very cool.
I sent you a video, I think, of it.
Love working dogs.
It was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah. I bet there's never a dull moment in your house with your doggies.
I know. They're probably so smart. Can they just like do house chores for you? Did you train them to do cool stuff?
No, they're very chill. They're chilling right now somewhere in the house. Yeah, they're good. And I used to do agility heavily, and then my dog had an injury, and I stopped, and now I'm focused on other things. So my like 2-year-old border collie, she and I travel like 6 months of the year all over the world. So we did 5 weeks in Colombia, 9 weeks in Portugal, some like shorter trips. We're going back to Portugal in 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And we
That's
just went to El Salvador this month.
So what is what do you do with the travel? Like, what's the purpose behind the traveling?
It depends. I mean, some of it is just to backpack around and have fun, to do things with my dog, to meet cool people. And I always see training clients when I'm traveling. And so in Portugal, I saw some clients, and I made friends with a bunch of followers. So typically when I'm traveling, people will contact me to ask if we can go out to dinner or meet. One person actually recognized me on the street while he was smoking a cigarette on the balcony and messaged me, and we became friends. So it's been really easy to meet people in the dog world just through my social media. And then I'm always shooting content of me working with my dog and what we're doing. I really like traveling to developing nations to film street dogs and their behaviors, and have my dog interact with them, because it's always really, really nicely. So that's
that's awesome.
When you're traveling and you see the street dogs, do you feel like they're a good representation of like innate behaviors, like just without any
domestication?
Like not domestication necessarily, because they're like people, but like as far as like they have no training, like zero training.
Yeah, they have zero training, and they almost all of them are very temperamentally sound and low aggression. They're very, very socially aware, socially appropriate, very bright. And they do very well with my dog, who doesn't like, somebody's giant Labradoodle running up and jumping on her head, but she can have like tons of street dogs around, meeting them. They're territorial, like their language is so clear to other dogs that typically you don't see a problem with a pet dog and a street dog.
So like in the street dogs, do you see any predatory aggression? Like where, do you know what I mean? Like, cause like you never hear about it.
No, I just don't think it would be tolerated if you had a street dog that was like running around killing people's chickens or attacking cats. It's not tolerated the way like aggression is tolerated here in the United States.
That makes sense.
And why do you think aggression is tolerated in the United States?
Oh, good question.
Like, what do you think about? Is it that people have put human feelings on animals? Like, is that part of it? Or is it, I don't know, like, are we just so...
It's just a thing.
Like, like we have there's less problems that we're managing.
I mean, we've talked about it. It's evolved so much into now, like the fur baby mentality, right? I feel like that's still changed and has been changing over time.
Just makes us more sensitive.
Different generations, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on. I think people culturally really value animals value pet animals differently here in the United States. So they like look at them more as human than animal. So there's that. I think some people, they see their pet in themselves. And so if they have any sort of behavioral thing going on, they don't want to give up on their pet because it's like they're giving up on themselves, sort of thing. I've seen that quite a bit. I think here we have the resources to manage and contain aggression better than they would with like a free roaming dog. And I think culturally, dogs with severe aggression, it's just globally more tolerated here. Like I've seen some court cases that are wild, where like another pet gets killed or somebody has like a severe injury from a dog, and the dog is allowed to return to society. And I think in a developing country that just would not
happen. Yeah.
And in a lot of countries, not even just developing, I don't think that would be the case.
Yeah.
Because it's not tolerated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting.
It is. It's fascinating. So like, is your view, where do you come down on that kind of a thing? Like I've always had initially when I was in the field, I, kind of had this, everybody, I don't know, for lack of a better way to say it, everybody deserves a chance kind of a thing. But then as I've gotten older, maybe I'm more cynical, I don't know, but I'm like, no, like the person, why are we valuing the dog over the person? Like, I don't know if I necessarily can grasp why we would leave an aggressive animal at a humane society for adoption, hoping that it finds the right animal when it could, or the right human family. Like with allocation of funds and being able to help.
Sure.
I'm not saying like you euthanize every animal that has like a bite history, but I mean, I feel like some of them we're just placing problems.
Yeah. I mean, my general mentality is like, your rights end where my nose begins. And so I don't want to live next door to a dog where if it gets out, it's going to maul my dogs and not stop.
Right.
Like, I don't want to worry about that, live like that. Just like we have gun control laws in the US and you can't like drive whatever vehicle you want at whatever speed on the street. I think when you have something that's like a weapon, it should be regulated,
It's a really good point.
I like that phrase of like your rights end when my nose, like that's a really, great way of just kind of like paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that in a room. All right.
Oh,
when, like
the personal bubble, like it's just,
and that animal's like, but those situations are a little bit different because you have fear and other things going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's fascinating.
Well, that kind of leads into like, at least coming from our field, right? We're very clinical and the hospital appointments, all of that stuff. So a lot of times we get behavior questions all the time, right? Of whether it's a puppy, an older dog, geriatric animal showing new behaviors. So a lot of times, and we were just talking about this earlier, our appointment time slot or just the time in the day, we really just don't have the ability to dive in. And nor, to be honest, I don't know if I have, definitely not the credentials you have, nor the information and knowledge that someone like you can provide. And so how can veterinarians and vet techs better prepare clients when we're recommending trainers like you or behaviorists and things like that? Like sometimes we try to give them a good start until they have the opportunity to find you or to get into you or something. But are there things that they come to you and you're like, oh my gosh, why are vets saying these things or technicians saying these things? You know what I mean? Just kind of like in preparation.
So I often have new clients or current clients come to me saying their vet has given them XYZ advice that is like advice that just isn't current or based on like science. So a few of the things we see that are problematic are don't take your puppy outside until they're fully vaccinated. Don't expose them to any other dogs. Don't put them on the ground. Don't take them anywhere until they have their rabies vaccine. And so, that creates like well, it pays for my mortgage because I get a bunch of really socialized dogs here. But I mean, I'm kidding, but not really even. And so that's just terrible advice that goes against, like, you know, the AVMA's guidelines on socialization. Every major medical veterinary organization recommends early socialization. And especially where I live here, we don't have sick animals wandering around. We are not a high risk area. And so it's really problematic advice. And as when you work with animals and you're getting referrals from veterinarians, you also have to be careful about not insulting another professional or stepping on their toes, and you have to go around that carefully. And then another thing I hear all the time from veterinarians is when we have a pet with a behavior issue, they're like, neuter the pet immediately. So they might be 4, 5, 6 months old. Don't train them. You have to neuter them first and see what happens.
Wow.
I've never heard that.
Oh gosh.
We have a lot of we have a lot of vets recommending like neutering for behavioral issues, and we know in animals like neutering affects behavior like often negatively, and it can affect behavior positively in very few specific documented incidences, like reduces resource guarding in female dogs, but not males. And so I often find myself having to gently educate the client.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like we come across that as well when there's medical advice given, right?
Oh, sure.
And we're just
Absolutely.
like, no, don't listen to Google. Don't listen to your grandma's cousin down the road, you know, things like that.
Yeah. But I think go ahead, Gia.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm just very careful. Like if a client or friend asks me a question that I feel like they could ask a veterinarian, or even somebody like on my account, I'll say, I'm not a vet, and this is a medical question. I can tell you what I would do for my own animal, but I can't advise you on what you should do for yours.
True.
And that can go for anything, you know, anything at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, so, okay, I've got to go back to what you were saying about the neutering and stuff. Where's your, I guess, since you had made the comment that neutering can be very negative on pets. So what is your philosophy or stance like if you have an animal that's asking you about when to neuter or spay? Like, what's your thoughts on it? What of spaying and neutering then?
So one of the easiest ways for me to deflect the question is to say, like, because a lot of our clients are buying dogs from good breeders. Like most good breeders have a clause that depending on the breed, you void your health contract if you neuter the animal before the age of 1 or even 2. And so I'm like, oh, what did your breeder say? What's in your contract? So then we can go about it that way. My clients, usually I would refer to a list of published research studies on the topic.
Do you have an opinion on, like, for instance, when the ideal time period would be to castrate a male dog or spay a female dog in terms of behavior and, like, you know, maybe allowing that dog to develop mentally?
Especially if you see signs of some sort of behavior early on. Like, are you like, oh, okay, we're not going to touch this dog until it's gone through like the first heat cycle, or until he's 2 if it's a male, you know, and whatnot?
Yeah, so it might be 2. You know, depending on the dog and the breed and the owner's ability to be responsible. You know, my animals aren't neutered and they're fine. My breed like has a low incidence of pyometra.
Right.
So I'm not like super worried about that. And also I'm on top of my dog. I know what to look for. If she was getting sick, I would immediately be like, why are you acting funny? You know, I'm not like
right.
parent. And then with male dogs, when we're sending pets to the veterinary behaviorist for a behavioral issue, the veterinary behaviorists almost always say, don't neuter them, because it can flip without testosterone. They can become even more fearful. So it can like cause an escalation in fear-based aggression.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Every pet and every family is different, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I know. I feel like every time we talk about this topic, could go 100 different ways every time.
There's so many different situations when we're talking about behavior. I mean, it's a ginormous umbrella of,
right.
you know, factors and the things that lead into one thing or another thing or another thing, and then they're so specific probably for every pet, depending upon the household that it's living in, so there's like all these contributing factors that you have to probably like weed through. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like.
I don't think there's any like right answer other than pediatric neuter, we know causes major behavioral issues, can cause major behavioral issues.
So do you think that that's a factor in, because like the humane societies and the shelters, they have a different objective. They're trying to sterilize the pets because of overpopulation. So they have a different objective than maybe what we do out in the industry as veterinarians. But do you think that's a factor in all the problems, like the behavior problems that we do see with people wanting to rescue and not, like there's the stigma against getting a purebred dog, it seems like nowadays.
There is quite the stigma. I get a lot of adopt, don't shop on my page, which is funny because to me, what I did was more like adopting than going to an animal shelter and walking up and down the aisles or going on the internet, browsing a bunch of pictures and picking and paying, like
right. Yeah.
To get my dogs is like a process of finding the breeder, getting to know the breeder, talking to the breeder, like her deciding she even wants to sell a puppy. It's not like, oh, okay, you want it. Oh, your landlord says yes, take it. So
right. Yeah.
She'll take. But I think getting a dog from a good breeder is more like adopting a child. And getting a dog from a shelter is more like going shopping the majority of the time.
Right.
But with early spay neuter, we see in a lot of rescue dogs like severe noise phobia and agoraphobia, like very bad. It's just not normal, and it's not normal for pets to go to the vet and be like shaking like a leaf, complete mental down, peeing themselves. Like we are seeing that a lot in dogs that were early neutered, or like the severe noise phobia is a big thing. Like we see so many dogs that can't even walk down the street because if a car hits a pothole, they're running for their life. Not even a little, oh, what was that? Like running to try to go home as if they're in a
Yeah. And I think like what I've seen over my career is that initially rescuing was a thing, but it wasn't like the thing to do. There was still a lot of, and I don't know how old you are, Gia, but I'm like older. So like there was a lot of people still buying dogs from breeders, and they are still now. But I mean, that was like the majority of dogs coming in clinics were a lot of breeder animals or animals that were sold by breeders. And I swear that I feel like I've seen this shift of aggression even in our industry, like where these pets have more problems and more issues that we're addressing than I ever have in the very beginning. That's maybe completely anecdotal, but it just seems really weird that you're getting all these pets into people's families from rescuing, which again is fine, but I just think they're not being educated as to really what they're acquiring.
Oh, I think the rescue process is jacked.
Because like I feel like they don't know, like a lot of the families don't know that their pet hasn't been socialized or desensitized. I mean, I think they try and do it the best they can, but I mean,
well, yeah, but like my parents adopted their dog from, nothing against the Humane Society, I love the Humane Society, but they told us like 3 different things about Mabel and none of it's true. It's all like opposite.
Yeah, I don't know.
So maybe that's why too, because people aren't,
because there's only so much time you can invest when you have X amount of animals in the shelter.
What state?
Go ahead.
Are you in? Like what?
Indiana.
We're in Indiana.
Oh, you're in Indiana. Okay. Yeah. So in New York, we have a dog shortage here. So we have tens of thousands of dogs being brought in for adoption here in our state. So the majority of dogs in municipal animal shelters are dogs who no one else wants, not even the rescues. And the rescues, to fulfill demand, have drastically increased their prices. Like when I adopted one of my dogs 14 years ago, she cost $16. Now the same dog would be $700 to $800 here in New York. Wow. And to fulfill the demand for adoptable rescue puppies, rescues are taking dogs from the few states that still have dogs available and then bringing them up to New York, or they're bringing them from other countries. And these dogs are not dogs that are suited to be living in Manhattan, and they're not dogs and breed mixes that are suited to be living like in suburbia. So we see like
Mhm.
a lot of dogs that are hunting breeds, and not like hunting breeds like, a lab. Like we're talking boar hunting dogs from the deep south. And these dogs have like a very high incidence of aggression in the home. And it's not to say that they're all like that, but you have suburban families with children adopting these dogs that have been bred for generations to
Mhm.
hunt and to live outside. They're not going to be ideal family pets.
Yeah.
What would you? Sorry, finish. Go ahead.
They think it's all how you raise them is like the popular phrase, and it's just very little to do with that.
I was just curious what you think like the main issue you have clients come to you for is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So we're known for working with dogs with severe aggressive behavior. And I would say the majority of my clients, when I think about what they're calling us for, it's because their dog is going after strangers. Like they can't have people at their house, basically.
Gotcha.
So stranger danger kind of stuff.
Yeah, stranger danger, extremely territorial, that kind of thing.
Okay. What about, do you have a high incidence with like aggression towards kids, like when people start having families and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that can be, that could be any dog, any breed.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
have, we're by Pennsylvania, so we have a lot of dogs coming from puppy mills. So we see a lot of people getting like golden doodles and labradoodles directly from puppy mills because they're inexpensive. And then, they get these dogs thinking they're going to be good family pets, and they have often severe resource guarding or low sociability, touch intolerance, and they bite a child.
This might be a controversial question, but what is the main breed that you see as a patient client?
So it depends on the issue.
Okay. I didn't know if there is one that stood out or
do you see specific issues associated with certain breeds?
Yes. Yeah. So with severe resource guarding, we see a lot of golden doodles for that, but that's also a very popular mix here in New York. So we get a ton of golden
Us here
for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's popular
Us too.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And then for aggressive behavior towards other dogs or people that involves a severe injury, it's almost always bully mixes or pit bulls. And those are like the cases that are the ones where it's like bad injuries. But then we have some that are just coming to us for anxiety, and they're really very nice. But if we're talking like a bad accident, it's almost always going to be a pit bull, on occasion a German Shepherd, on occasion a Rottweiler, on occasion any other breed. We see a lot of French bulldogs for aggressive behavior, like a lot. Aggressive behavior towards children and other dogs. And almost always they have something physical going on. So we're sending them to the rehab veterinarian as well.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You said you worked with rescues. Do you do like behavior testing for rescues or like shelters or whatnot?
Yeah, so I have a contract with a municipal animal shelter, so I do all of their behavioral evaluations and go and help with the animals there. And then sometimes private rescues contact me for advice or to evaluate their dogs if they have a dog that they're not quite sure of. And then I sometimes have families that want help to pick a dog, so I'll go and evaluate dogs for them or help them pick a dog from a breeder.
That's genius. That's
What has
great.
kind of been in my head with like when you go to a humane society and adopt a dog, the whole stigma of, oh, they were tested at the humane society. Oh, that's a stressful environment. They didn't actually do like an accurate behavior testing. Do you do the testing at like the facility, or do you like go off site? Do you take them like, I don't know. I mean, a dog's probably going to be stressed in any new environment, but I feel like the shelter is very, very high stress. So I was just curious how your process is with that.
So all of the dogs at our shelter are evaluated like somewhere on the shelter grounds, and we don't do a foster program because of the liability involved. However, like sometimes us as staff will take animals home. And so like I'll take puppies home or younger dogs home or cats, and then I would evaluate them at my house.
Okay.
And what I find is that animals that act out in the animal shelter are pets that have problems. because people's
Mm-hmm.
dogs go to boarding kennels that are very similar to animal control, and their dogs aren't going off the rails with extreme aggression or having a total meltdown, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Time you have a pet that goes to animal control and they're wildly problematic, I think that's indicative of potentially a deep-seated behavioral issue.
So if you work primarily with aggressive dogs and in those situations, have you had any close encounters yourself with injuries and bites and stuff?
I'm very careful. And I also can read dogs really quickly, and I'm good at defensive handling. So I very rarely get bitten, and in the situations that I have been bitten, I'm like testing the waters, and I know it's not going to be bad, but maybe there's children in the home and I just want to see what's going to happen. But I have had several incidences where, you tell the people before you go to their house, this is how this is going to go down. Do not let your dog rush me at the door. You need to have your dog on a leash and behind a baby gate. And there have been several incidences where people let the dog loose to see what they would do. So now it's like, I'm very clear. If you, basically what I say is, if you let your dog attack me when I come into your house, it's like letting your car roll over the mechanic in the driveway, and I will sue you, and I will personally sue you. So I need to just if it's a dangerous dog, right? I tell them,
Right.
I need to be very clear about this. You are to control your dog. And if
you have to protect yourself.
you need to, I will coach you through it. So some dogs that maybe we start out and the dog is in a crate behind a door, and we talk and we talk and we figure out how we're going to do it. But now that I tell people like the reality of what will happen if they let their dog rip on me, people are respectful. But before we said that, people would literally take it like it's a joke, because a lot of people also think their dog would never bite somebody, even though their dog has. So,
Yeah.
Yes.
We have that.
We get that a lot
all the time. Like, oh, I'm so surprised that he did that.
Wow.
Like,
he's never acted like that. That's so strange.
That happened to me today during a tech appointment.
Yep.
I want to go back to one thing that you said earlier, because I'd love your opinion. You had said that there's, which I agree, there's a lot of talk about nature versus nurture. Do you feel like that like with your expertise and what you've learned and all the education that you have, is it more that it's nature, it's just the way these animals are wired? If like how do you feel about that? Like what's your opinion?
I think nature plays a bigger part than nurture. I think
so. You feel like nurture can't outweigh nature?
No, I don't.
Yeah, that's how I've always felt. I just don't feel like there's enough. I just don't think the way dogs are wired and how they process information, that they don't care about us. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's no analyzation that's occurring going, well, I really like this person, so I'm not going to do this behavior. Like, it just doesn't, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They're not people, and they don't have the capacity that we have to want to change, you know?
Right. So when you're talking to owners about dogs and puppies in the beginning, and say you have a dog in front of you that really is in great shape as far as like mentally, like it's a clean slate, if you will. Do you explain to them like how dogs, if you were going to explain to them how dogs think, what would you say to them? Or how do you explain to them how they're motivated and how they think?
I would say like dogs are always self-motivated to satisfy their own needs and to protect their own interests. They don't act out of spite. They don't act out of malice. They have no capacity to understand what we're thinking or to say, hey, she's angry. When I feel angry, it feels like this. We feel the same emotion. Like, that's really complex. And they have a brain that's like very small. They it, right? So I try to explain to them that it's like having an infant or a 2-year-old. They cannot understand how their actions affect others.
Right.
Only understand like, this is working for me, this isn't working for me.
Yes.
My owner is safe, or my owner is very dangerous at this moment.
Yeah.
So fast. I wish you lived closer.
I know. Well, that's one of the things that I always say to puppy owners is the dog does not care about you. It's only cares about itself. So like it's only going to repeat what's good for it. And it may not be what you think is good for, like, so like marrying the two is really what we're trying to do as far as training goes, so that what you want is
self-inflict our emotions on animals, which is why it doesn't turn.
But the one type of training that you have is, I think it was is it called the third way?
Yeah, that was my original.
Which is like a little bit different than just clicker training, right?
Yeah, she was before clicker training, I believe. She's from Wisconsin, and Chris Bach, she trained all of her dogs using positive reinforcement before positive reinforcement was a thing. But she is one of the few positive reinforcement based trainers who consistently puts very high level obedience trial titles on her dogs. Like, she's a very consistent trainer. She worked with a variety of breeds, and with her methodology, she actually gets results. And I started studying her method just because the daycare and training facility I worked at in Oregon during college happened to have one of her master trainers who was the former owner. And so that's how I was introduced to the method. It was just pure, luck. And other than reading like Don't Shoot the Dog and a few other like classic books, I hadn't had like a formal education in dog training. And so even though I studied that when I was 18 years old, I still, when I go over her old DVDs or look at her book, I still I find that I agree with almost all of it. And I can't say that for other things I've read or learned over the years, or even current information, but her stuff is very, very solid.
What do you think the difference, can you explain the difference to people, like from the different types of training methodologies, or the most common ones that people are probably going to come in contact with?
Yeah. So we have, positive reinforcement based training, which is generally like reward based training, and you're not using physical corrections or fear to motivate the dog. So you have that positive reinforcement. And then within that sect, there are some people that are very militant about it. So they would call themselves like force free. And they believe in causing no stress to the animal during learning. They do error free learning. There's an extreme. But generally, positive training means you're not yanking on your dog or shocking them or doing anything that might be seen as negative. And then you have balanced training, and balanced training is typically using some level of punishment and negative reinforcement plus rewards. And then you have old school compulsion training, which nobody calls themselves a compulsion trainer, but compulsion is basically I punish the dog almost exclusively to motivate them or make them uncomfortable or scare them or whatever. And I hardly reward the dog. The reward is the absence of the dog, being afraid or uncomfortable. The problem is that now there are compulsion trainers that call themselves balanced. So the general public is very, very confused because there is no, with positive reinforcement, we have lots of different certifications. Some are better than others. My favorite is IAABC. It's pretty strict. But with balanced training, there is no universal certification where if somebody is certified, that they're not going to do something bad to your dog.
Got it. So sometimes in the clinic, one of the things that we'll commonly see are pinch collars, as a way of it's a negative reinforcement, right? The dog's only behaving because it has to, because it avoids the stimulus. I try to talk to people about, and I don't know what your feeling is, but getting away from those so that you have more consistent behavior. So the dog's behaving, because it wants to, but then there's more consistency with the behavior. So now anybody can walk the dog, not, what I mean, even without the collar.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's appropriate when we're talking about those things in the room to get those people away from those types of devices? Or do you feel like it's okay for them to be using, how would you counsel us to talk to owners about those types of issues?
So we want to always be careful, and even myself and other veterinary behaviorists, we have to be careful to not get people to quit a tool like cold turkey or right away, because now people have physical limitations, and somebody may be using a prong collar and then they switch to a regular collar and they get dragged down and their dog does something bad. Some people just don't have the strength and they need coaching and different tools in order to control the dog. So if we see somebody with a prong collar, we want to find out why they're using it. we want to look at if it's fitted correctly and if it's going to cause physical injury to the pet. And I would say like 95% of people, they have like really poorly fitted prong collars.
Yes, they do.
And
Yes.
like it's bad. So we
Yeah.
want to educate like, hey, this is a really serious tool. Your dog can like damage their trachea. They can damage like their thyroid gland, possibly. You can injure like their neck. So we want to like fix that as soon as possible. And then I would explain that we know that prong collars, because typically the dog is pulling because they're excited about something in the environment. We know that prong collars can cause aggressive behavior and fear in dogs, because if I'm a friendly puppy and I want to say hi, now something's pinching me, I may associate the pinch with the person that I'm pulling towards or the dog that I'm pulling towards. And that's really, problematic. And we do see a lot of pets that develop behavioral issues partially because they are being punished either purposefully or inadvertently by different tools when they're around potential triggers.
So for those dogs and puppies and whatever in the positive reinforcement training method, for those who aren't as food motivated, is praise and pets and is that truly enough for those types of dogs?
No.
Okay.
No. So when people say, oh, my dog is motivated by praise or petting, like the dog either has really rudimentary training and listens when they feel like it, or they're doing something else that the pet is avoiding. So the pet isn't actually excited about the petting and the praise. They're relieved because petting and praise means you're not going to be punished. So typically that's why petting and praise is a motivator. And every dog can be worked with unless they have some like serious physical issue. They can be worked with to develop food motivation and drive, because all animals are motivated by eating. And just like you probably see, the most of our clientele, the dogs are very overweight. And so like they're not food motivated. And if a dog isn't food motivated, like my younger dog is not super food motivated, we figure out something else. And she loves to chase rocks, and she'll play with a leaf in your hand, or like wants to like run with you and interact. So I use like tossing sticks and rocks for her when I'm out to reward the recall, and it works just fine. Like there's always another way.
You just got to find what works.
So just even so an object or a toy or can be potentially as motivating as food, but not
like balls,
praise
frisbee,
falls
right?
like it's not even a
thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can build praise as like a tertiary reinforcer. So if every time I hear praise, I then get food,
right?
I get my ball, then I start to associate praise with those things. And you can build up praise to be somewhat of a reinforcer, but it's never going to be as much as a primary reinforcer, like etc.
Interesting.
It's really cool.
Good to know.
Very, very cool.
I feel like we've gone off the cuff here so much. We're so fascinated by this topic. I
do have one off-topic question again off of our list. I think this is like a stereotypical question and whatnot, but like, did you see clients? Did you continue practicing through the COVID period when people were getting puppies out the butt?
Yeah, I wasn't really.
And did you see an influx of behavioral issues after the pandemic was over?
Yes, but I've been steadily seeing behavioral issues increase since I started. Like,
okay.
Because I've been.
So it wasn't like a huge influx out of nowhere
necessarily. There is and there isn't. Because we had high adoption rates, we were having a lot of dogs come in from out of state, and a lot of people buy dogs from puppy mills and pet stores. And breeders obviously aren't going to breed to fill demand, because that's not how good breeding works. So I think we had more people adopting dogs from out of state, more people adopting dogs from out of the country. The dogs people were getting, weren't necessarily the best because they're bringing every single thing up. So we saw people adopting super, super problematic dogs more so than usual. And then with COVID, I don't think COVID should have made a difference in how we socialized animals. I think often it's an excuse. So we see a lot of people who are like, he's a pandemic puppy. And I'm like, your butt out of your house and walked them down the block and stayed 6 feet away from people if you were that scared. You could have sent your dog to doggy daycare. You could have, taken your dog to a training class because they all were, requiring masks and you stay far apart and some of them were outdoors. You could have still taken your dog downtown and rewarded them for noticing people and dogs. And, there's a million things they could have done and they just didn't. And I think it's sort of typical that people don't do what they need to do sometimes.
Yeah, it's just what we hear a lot. So I was just curious because like I have a dog that I can't touch and the owner said it was a COVID puppy.
Yeah.
And so we just hear it a lot.
I remember when we were locked down, well, we kept going, but like in the COVID time, all these puppies coming in. I remember having those conversations of be like, okay, here's some other ways you can socialize your dog or expose them, thinking like,
yes,
this is going to be interesting. But that's fascinating that you're right. Like people are just using it as a reason not to take ownership, essentially, or responsibility, I guess. But
yes.
So do you have a different approach or what's your philosophy when a pet comes to you already on behavior modification medications? Because a lot of times, not a lot of times, I should say, there's a good majority where people will say, I don't have the time to go to a trainer, whatever the case may be. So we start them on a behavior modification med, of course, when deemed appropriately. Does that mess you up in your approach? Does it help you? Does it just depend like usual or?
Yeah. So it's sometimes with behavior modification meds, it's like odd medication that the vet behaviorist wouldn't necessarily choose. And then we're seeing a dog like that maybe did something that they shouldn't have done had they not been on that particular medication. Or we see dogs who the owner is upset because the dog is on too high of a dosage or the wrong medication. The dog is having side effects. And then the pet parent is like completely turned off from medication and doesn't want to use it anymore. But generally, like with the veterinarians we see that put the pet on behavioral medication and then send them to us, it's going to be like a basic SSRI. And so if I meet the pet and I'm like, this is not working for your dog, I think you should see the veterinary behaviorist. We already have data on, okay, this medication at this dosage isn't cutting it. So it's helpful, so for the majority of time, it's helpful. And when it's not, we can hopefully rectify it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But it's always great to work with a veterinary behaviorist. And if you don't have any in your area, you can work with a veterinary behaviorist that'll work with you remotely, like a vet-to-vet consult, because they really know what they're doing. They use medications and combinations that are tricky. And often when you find the right medication or medication combination, it's almost curative. Sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, we have one here locally that we absolutely love. She actually is like right in our county here, and she's fantastic.
And then the university as well.
And then of course Purdue University is here. So we've got those two. We've got two different resources. Luckily, we have somebody locally, but then also we have Purdue if we have to refer to as well.
Yep,
it's there. Yeah, it's a huge resource. Yeah, for sure.
A little off topic from dogs. I saw on your website that there is stuff about cats. How often do you deal with cats?
Super rarely. I find that most people they don't work with their cats. I
know it's not a thing when you think about behavior, like, oh, dog.
They either live with the issue or they rehome the pet. So we see a lot of pets coming into the shelter for like using the bathroom inappropriately in the house, or for issues with children, or for ruining furniture because we don't allow declawing in our state anymore. But people don't so much seek help. A few times a year, somebody will ask for help. And usually it's because of inappropriate elimination or because they're introducing a new cat to the household and it's not going well.
Yeah. I feel like that's the majority.
Yeah.
You do have cats? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I have cats. I have 2 cats. Yeah.
Nice.
Are they trained?
I mean, they're cool. They're inside outside cats. I have also ducks, and I was having like a problem with rats because poultry.
I've got ducks too.
Oh, what breed?
It's the Pekins.
Oh, okay. I have Indian.
I did
ducks, the little one.
You have what?
I have runner ducks, the wine bottle ones, like straight up and down.
Yeah,
they're funny.
I like those. I had Welsh Harlequins as well, and I love those, but ducks will be ducks and don't live forever.
That's true. So my cats, I mean, they go to the bathroom outside, but they did that themselves. So and they know some tricks. They're a little trained. They'll put up their paws, give you high five, spin in a circle, do touch with your finger. Yes, they are.
Oh, that's cool.
I
That's
was going to
awesome.
say APC trained church.
Yeah, I was good. Yeah, I know. Yeah, very cool.
Well, I feel like we could keep going,
I
to
know.
be honest.
Yeah.
But
Go
I want to
for
be
hours and
we want
hours
to be
and
respectful of your time as well.
Yeah.
So I think that we just maybe need to see if a part 2 is in the works.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll wrap it up for today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Veterinary Roundtable.
Wait,
Thank you.
1 second before you finish your outro. Gia, do you want to say where everybody can find you?
yes.
Your website?
Oh, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So you can find me on my website, which is thinkingcanine.com, and it's CANINE, or on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or Facebook. And my handle is thinkingcanine.
Love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much
Yes,
for joining
thank you
us.
so much. It was awesome.
Okay, now
All
go.
right, now
Okay,
take us out.
Now the official.
Okay.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Veterinary Roundtable. Remember, send in those questions and be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at the Veterinary Roundtable. If you enjoyed this episode or a previous episode, leave us a review on your podcast provider of choice. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Veterinary Roundtable.